Joshua.
And we're
We're
the
the
Midnight
Midnight
Guild.
Guild. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in. A big thank you to all of our new followers, all of the likes, subscribes, all the people who shared our content. We greatly appreciate you.
Very much.
Welcome you along for our journey here. So, on today's episode, I am going to be telling a story. Yes, a true story. And it is one that dear Ariel here has never heard before.
I knew who this was, but I've never dove into the details because it just makes me sad.
It makes her very sad. She needs to take a little break. We're going to give it to her. Um, a little bit about JonBenet Ramsey. She was a little beauty queen, little it girl of her time. Bless her heart, yeah. Her full name was JonBenet Patricia Ramsey. She was born on August 6, 1990, and it rude, honey, rude. We don't rev in this neighborhood. Anywho, she was born in Atlanta, Georgia, the younger of two children to Patricia, little Patsy Ramsey, and JonBenet Ramsey. Now, she had one older brother, and his name was Burke, and he was born in 1987.
Burke or Bert?
Burke.
Burke. Okay.
Burke. Yes, like a Birkin.
Yeah.
But without the N.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Um. So they lived up in Boulder, Colorado, and she attended the High Peaks Elementary School. Now, a little bit about her parents. John Ramsey, her daddy, he was a businessman. He was the president of Access Graphics. That was a computer software company that later became um, Lockheed Martin. And in 1991, he moved with Patsy, his second wife, and his family to Boulder, where the Access Graphics headquarters are located. Patsy Ramsey, Lil JonBenet's mama, she entered Lil JonBenet in various beauty pageants, all in Boulder, Colorado. She won the titles of America's Royal Miss, Little Miss. Oh Lord, that's Charlevoix, maybe. Little Miss Colorado, Colorado State All Star, Kids Cover Girl, and National Tiny Miss Beauty.
Oh.
Yeah. So like this little girl, honey, she had some crayons.
Right.
She had some crayons. Um, JonBenet's active role in child beauty pageants and Patsy's reported she was one of them pageant mamas, you know. And apparently this behavior showed at the pageants. And it was very highly reported in the media, and especially after what had happened to JonBenet.
That her mom was kind of like a bitch.
Well, I mean that she was, well, quote unquote, a pageant mama. So I guess very demanding, very, usually very OCD. Anyway, we'll just dive into it. There's no, nice way to put it.
I think I'm gonna move this for
Okay.
here because I'm gonna have to give commentary.
That's fine. I'll try to talk a little bit louder too.
Yeah.
So JonBenet Patricia Ramsey was killed at age 6 in her family's home at 755 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado, on the night of December 25th, 1996.
Oh my God, Christmas?
Yes, it was Christmas night. I know. Her body was found in the basement of the house about 7 hours after she had been reported missing. She had sustained a broken skull and a garrote. Am I saying that right? A garrote was tied around her neck.
I don't know what that is.
A garrote.
Is that like a noose?
Kinda. It's like you can go tighter.
But 7 hours.
7 hours, yes. After she had been reported missing.
That doesn't make any sense. How could they not have found her in the basement?
Well,
are we gonna get to that?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
The autopsy reported. The autopsy report stated that JonBenet's official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with cerebral trauma. Excuse me. Three, three. Her death was ruled a homicide. And now this case generated worldwide attention.
See, I remember that. I remember
Yeah,
I was really little, but I remember it was the talk. It was everywhere.
yeah, very much so, very much so. And a lot of that attention was because her mama Patsy, who was also a former beauty queen herself, she'd entered her in all of these beauty
Pageants.
pageants, just one right after the other. 7 hours after she, go missing, they finally find her in in the basements, and of course, this it the media's there, everyone's there. So then a lot of the evidence starts kind of piling up, and that's kind of what we're going to go through now. Um, so now 6 months. I will say this before we get into all that. 6 months after JonBenet's death, the Ramseys moved back to Atlanta. Okay, so we'll go into some of the evidence and stuff like that around the case,
Okay.
and then we'll tie it all back together.
Okay.
All right. So some of the eyewitnesses was Scott Gibbons. He was a neighbor. He claimed that around midnight, while looking from his kitchen window, he saw the upper kitchen of the Ramsey's residence to be lit up with the lights on dim. And then another neighbor, Melody Stanton, reported that she was awoken shortly after midnight by the sound of a child's scream coming from the Ramsey's residence. Now, along with JonBenet, there was a ransom note. Yeah, so we're going to talk about that
Okay.
too. So, Patsy Ramsey reported that she found a 2.5 page handwritten ransom note on the kitchen staircase in their home. The note demanded 118,000. Excuse me. Yes, no, that's right. $118,000 for JonBenet's return. And then her dad John pointed out to the police that like arrived first on the scene, that was like literally the amount of his Christmas bonus that year, like the exact amount. Yeah. Um. So, investigators had looked at several theories behind the dollar amount demanded, considering employees at where he worked
Right.
as possible,
Suspects.
suspects. Um, and they also considered the possibility that the ransom demand was a reference to Psalm 118 and spoke to religious sources to determine possible relevance of that, which I guess it was debunked.
Right.
Um, let's see here. The ransom note was unusually long. The FBI told the police that it was very unusual for such a note like that to be written at crime scenes,
Right.
like such a long note. The police believed that the note was staged because it did not have any fingerprints except for Patsy's and the authorities who had handled it, and because it included an unusual use of exclamation marks and italicisms. The note and the practice draft were written with a pen and notepad from the Ramsey's home.
So they think the parents staged
They
it.
think that, yeah, that was always the big conclusion, was that the parents had staged this whole thing. Um, so like they even got forensic pathologists like to come and review this note. It says here that Michael Baden, a board certified forensic pathologist who had consulted with both sides of the case, said he had never seen a note like it in his 60 years experience, and that he did not think it was written by an outside stranger. So that really kind of moved the parents into the limelight as far as
Suspects go.
suspects go. Um, a federal court actually ruled that it was highly unlikely that Patsy wrote the note, citing 6 certified handwriting experts. The court bemoaned the existence of self proclaimed experts without credentials, trying to enter the case by accusing Patsy without scientific basis. Um,
Did they check the dad and the brother's handwriting?
do what now?
Did they check the dad and the brother's handwriting?
Well, we're going to get to that.
Okay.
Um, so we actually have a copy of the note
Okay.
that I was,
Oh God,
you know,
I'm not ready.
listeners, so
I'm
they
probably
can,
gonna be freaking out the whole time, so everybody just ignore me.
we just,
I'll try to remain calm.
it'll be okay. It'll be okay. Mr. Ramsey, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At the time we have your daughter in our possession, she is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. 100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining 18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attache to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter. Any deviation of my instructions will result in the immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do particularly like you, so I, excuse me, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but be warned that we are familiar with law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You're not the only fat cat around, so don't think that killing will be difficult. So don't think, yeah, that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use that good southern common sense of yours. It is up to you now, John. Victory. And it is signed SBTC.
Does it? Do we? Do they ever figure out what the signature means?
I'm not sure.
Ugh.
So, I guess they find that JonBenet's missing. They find this ransom note, so they call 911.
After it literally
Um,
says not to.
yes. So the only people known to be in the house on the night of JonBenet's death were her immediate family, Patsy, John, and their son Burke. The ransom note contains specific instructions against contacting police and friends, but Patsy telephoned the police at 5:52 a.m. She also called family and friends. Two police officers responded to the 911 call and arrived at the Ramseys' home within 3 minutes. They conducted a cursory search of the house but did not find any sign of forced entry. Um, excuse me. Officer Rick French went to the basement and came to a door that was secured by an additional wooden latch at the top of the door frame. He paused for a moment in the front of the door, but walked away without opening it. French later explained that he was looking for an exit route used by the kidnapper since the wooden latch was holding the door closed from inside the house. The kidnapper could not have used this door and then closed the latch from the inside. ruling this out as a possible exit. JonBenet's body was later found behind that door. So he saw it was latched, didn't give it another thought. Um, with JonBenet still missing, John made arrangements to pay the ransom. A forensics team was dispatched to the house. The team initially believed that the child had been kidnapped, and JonBenet's bedroom was the only room in the house that was um, like cut off to prevent any contamination of evidence or anything like that. No precautions were taken to prevent contamination of evidence in the rest of the house. Yeah, so it was just, and it was a zoo because I mean, like I said, there was news stations, everything.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, friends, victim advocates, and the Ramses family minister arrived at the home to show support. Visitors picked up and cleaned surfaces in the kitchen, so people was picking up, helping out, bringing
Oh,
food, doing what
the
neighbor,
wiping away all that
yeah, doing
evidence.
what neighbors do. Excuse me. Boulder detective Linda Arndt arrived at about 8 a.m. In anticipation of receiving further instructions by the kidnappers, but there was never in like an attempt by anyone to claim the money. So he gathered the money, but there was never anything that went further. There's never
Right.
a phone call or anything. At 1 p.m., Detective Arndt asked John Ramsey and Fleet White, a family friend, to search the house to see if anything seemed amiss, like if anything was out of place. They started to search in the basement. John opened the latch door with Officer French that the Officer French had overlooked earlier with the latch on it. And his daughter's body lay in one of the rooms. JonBenet's mouth was covered with duct tape. A nylon cord was found around her wrists and neck, and her torso was covered by a white blanket. Um, John picked her body up and rushed her upstairs. When so the crime scene was even further
Yeah.
contaminated. Um, each of the Ramseys apparently provided handwriting, blood, and hair samples to the police that day. John and Patsy participated in the preliminary interview for more than 2 hours, and their son Burke was also interviewed within the first couple of weeks following JonBenet's death. So they, from the get go, they were pretty cooperative. Um, so the next part is probably going to be a little bit troubling. It's her autopsy. So just wanted to let everyone know ahead of time that it's probably going to discuss some pretty graphic things. The autopsy revealed that JonBenet was killed by strangulation in a skull fracture. The official cause of death was asphyxia by strangulation associated with um, cran- cranial cerebral trauma. There was no evidence of could not be ruled out. Although no bodily fluids was found, there was evidence that there had been an injury in that area. Evidence also suggested that the paintbrush used in the garrote was also used for the assault.
Paintbrush.
Yeah, so, like, a garrote is like something that usually has two handles and would go back. Like, think of a string and two
Oh,
handles.
okay.
Yeah, and I guess one there was a paintbrush, and that's what they um, suspected was used in the assault. At the time of the autopsy, the pathologist recorded that it appeared that her area had been wiped with a cloth, um, and her death was ruled a homicide. Now, a garrote that was made from a length of nylon cord and the broken handle of a paintbrush was tied around JonBenet's neck and had apparently been used to strangle her. Part of the bristle end of the paintbrush was found in a tub containing Patsy's art supplies. So it looks like it was made from stuff inside the house. Um, but the bottom third of it was never found despite extensive searching of the house. So they only found not the whole
Part of it.
part of it. Um, the autopsy revealed a vegetable or fruit material, which may represent pineapple, which JonBenet had eaten a few hours before her death. Photographs of the home taken on the day when JonBenet's body was found showed a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table with a spoon in it. Um, and John nor Patsy said they remembered putting the bowl on the table or feeding pineapple to JonBenet. Um, they did report that they found Patsy's fingerprints on that bowl, though. Experts, media commentators in the Ramseys have identified potential suspects in the case. Boulder police initially focused almost exclusively on just John and Patsy. That's who they kind of suspected it was. Um, by October of 1997, over 1,600 people in their index of persons of interest. In this case, there's 1,600. Errors that were made in the initial investigation complicated the resolution of the investigation in applicable theory. Those errors included loss and contamination of evidence. There's so many people in and out. Lack of experienced and technical staff on the investigation, evidence shared with the Ramseys, and delayed informal interviews with the parents. Um, Lou Smith was a detective who came out of retirement in early 1997 to assist the Boulder County's district attorney's office with the case. In May 1998, he presented his findings to the Boulder Police with other staff members of the DA's office, concluding that the evidence pointed away from the Ramseys. They were unable to successfully challenge the police department's belief that the Ramseys were guilty. The DA's office sought to take control of the investigation due to the animosity between the police and the DA's office, because I guess the police were really pushing hard that, John and Patsy were the ones who committed this crime. Um, and there was a lot of pressure on the DA's to obtain a conviction. Colorado Governor Roy Romer interceded and named Michael Caine as special prosecutor to initiate a grand jury. Um, Two of the lead investigators in the case had opposing views. Both Lou Smith and Steve Thomas ultimately resigned. Smith because he believed that the investigation had incompetently overlooked the intruder hypothesis. So like that was excuse me, his theory was that someone broke in and did it. And Thomas because the DA's office had interfered with and failed to support the police investigation of the case. Um, a grand jury was convened beginning in September of 1998 to consider indicting the Ramseys for charges related to the case. So they were trying to build a case up against the
Wow.
parents. In 1999, the grand jury returned a true bill to charge the Ramseys with placing the child at risk in a way that led to her death, based on the probable cause standard applied in such grand jury proceedings. But Boulder County District Attorney Alex Hunter did not prosecute them because he did not believe that he could meet the higher standard of proving guilt beyond reasonable doubt that is required for a criminal conviction. So,
What I don't get is why are the like what evidence did the police have that they were? Why are they pushing so hard for the Ramseys to be
well,
indicted?
just I guess just the fact that they were the only ones in the home. There was no evidence of forced entry.
And the note
Um,
looks staged,
well,
probably
they're saying that the note looks staged. That I mean, they do know that it came from,
inside the house.
inside the house. The garage that was
Right.
found with her, it was made from stuff around the
Yeah. Well,
house.
and not only that, who has time? If you're an intruder and you're breaking in
Yeah,
and you're taking this little girl and everything, first of all, you never took her because
mm,
she was left in the home.
yeah,
Second of all, um, who's going to sit down in the place they're taking a child from and write out a
Yeah,
two-page note
well,
like they have nothing to worry
an
about?
insanely
Yeah, like they
long
don't have a
note.
thing, a care in the world.
You know,
That's doesn't
and
make
like I said, in the
sense.
only fingerprints that was found on it
Was her
was
mom's, right?
in the officers that handled
Yeah,
it. So this investigation, I mean, it's still, I guess, technically ongoing.
right.
It is, a cold case, but there was two big major theories. There was, the family theory that one of the family members committed the crime, or there was the intruder theory. That was the two big main theories. But I mean, over the next 2 decades, this case it's gained even more attention, and in 2015, no, excuse me, I'm sorry, 2010, um, it was even reopened. So, but the theories, as it was, is we'll kind of go over one and then the other.
Okay.
So the family member theory, the Boulder police initially concentrated almost exclusively on the parents, John and Patsy. According to Greg McCary, a retired profiler with the FBI, statistically, it is a 12 to 1 probability that it's a family member or a caregiver, usually in these situations. Um, and let's see here. So, and like I said, the police saw no evidence of forced entry, but they did see evidence of staging of the scene, such as the ransom note. Like I said, they thought it was staged. They said that the Ramseys were not cooperative. Yeah, that they in solving like they just weren't very cooperative
Aw.
with anything. The Ramseys said that their reluctance was due to their fear that there would not be a full investigation for intruders, and that they would be hastily selected as the key suspects in the case. And that, yeah,
That's a weird thing to say.
yeah,
Because I don't know about you, but if my kid went missing, I would be like, turn my house upside down. I don't care what you have to do.
oh, absolutely,
Like, that would be the last thing on my mind.
yeah, I know
Is that they're going
it's
to think about me. Find my kid.
yeah.
That's
Um,
creepy. That's weird.
So, John Edward Douglas, he was a retired special agent and unit chief in the the FBI. Um, he was one of the first profilers, and he's written and co-written books about criminal psychology, true crime novels, and his biography. Regarding like this case in particular, he contends that John and Patsy Ramsey did not kill their daughter. Of the case, he said many crimes are tried in the court of public opinion long before they reach the court of law. But I know of no other case in which the majority of people have decided the solution based on statistics. I know of, excuse me, I know of no other case in which the public substantially that believes what has been reported in the tabloids. I know of no other case in which the mainline media have let the tabloids take the lead and then reported on their reporting. All I know and I know of no other case in which largely respectable television programs have so tried to outdo each other in sensationalism. So it was kind of like a split of people who believed that John and Patsy did it or someone else did
Somebody
it.
broke in or something.
Um, One theory is that Patsy struck JonBenet in a fit of rage after a bedwetting episode and strangled her to cover up what had happened after mistakenly thinking she was already dead. However, Patsy did not have a known history of uncontrolled anger or anything like that. JonBenet's brother, Burke Ramsey, later said, "We didn't get spanked, nothing of the sort, nothing close, nothing near laying a finger on us, let alone killing your child." let's see here. They said that theoretically the strangulations could have been a red herring. Um, and
What's that?
like it's like and kind of like to conceal up something else.
Oh,
So it was to conceal other elements of the assault and killing. Um, Burke, the brother, he was 9 at the time of JonBenet's death. He was interviewed by investigators at least 3 times. The first 2 interviews did not raise any concerns about him. A review by a child psychologist stated that it appeared that the Ramseys had healthy, caring family relationships. In 1998, Boulder Police Chief said during an interview with a news reporter that Burke Ramsey was not involved in the killing of his sister. In May 1999, the Boulder County District Attorney's Office reiterated that Burke Ramsey was not a suspect. So the investigators never have considered him as a suspect either.
okay.
Um, the Ramseys offered $100,000 reward for in a newspaper, and that was in looks like April of 1997. So if anybody had any information on this case, they were offering up to $100,000. 3 days later, more than 3 days later, more than 4 months after the body of their daughter had been found, they submitted for the first time to separate formal interviews at the Boulder County Justice Center. So I guess at this point in time, they'd done all of their interviews together. So this was the first time they were going to actually do separate interviews.
Okay.
Um, in 1999, Colorado Governor Bill Owens spoke out, telling the Ramsey couple to quit hiding behind their attorneys, quit hiding behind their PR firm. So they, like the governor of the state's telling them to quit hiding. Um, a Colorado grand jury in 1999 voted to indict the parents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The indictment cited 2 counts each of child abuse and said that the parents did unlawfully, knowingly, recklessly, and feloniously permit a child to be unreasonably placed in a situation that posed a threat of injury to the child's life or health, which resulted in the death of JonBenet Ramsey, a child under the age of 16.
What's that mean? Like, what does it mean they put her in a?
I'm not 100% sure.
I'm like, what? I'm
Um,
like, what did they put her in? Unless they're referring to her being in pageants and like where she would be seen by hundreds of people.
yeah,
Like maybe that was putting her in
possibly.
danger. Maybe, but people put their kids in pageants every day. I don't see how you
Oh, I
could use
know.
that as an indictment. But I mean,
I mean, they ate it up when it was Honey Boo Boo.
I don't know if I've seen clips, but I've
Oh,
never watched the show.
I miss so much, honey.
Um, I'm just that's just crazy to me. I'm like, how could you use that as an indictment? That's like basically saying you can't take your child out.
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
But
Um,
no, don't get me wrong. The parents are super sus to me.
oh
They are
yeah,
sus.
but at the end of it all, it still came down to there wasn't enough evidence, so they never did.
Like, say court.
No, no, not in that way anyhow. It says that the police and the prosecutors followed leads for intruders partly due to the unidentified boot mark left in the basement room where her body was found. So apparently they had found a boot mark outside of a window.
Okay.
Um, Early persons of interest included a neighbor, Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus, Chris Wolf, a local reporter whose then girlfriend reported him as a suspect, family
Oh,
housekeeper Linda Hoffman Pugh, and a man named Michael Helgoth, who died in an apparent suicide shortly after JonBenet's death. Hundreds of DNA tests were performed to find a match to the DNA recovered during her autopsy. And in 2003, defamation lawsuit related to the case, Wolf versus Ramsey, involving the Ramseys publicly identifying early suspect in the case. Lou Smith, a detective in the case, assessed the evidence and concluded that an intruder had committed the crime. On the night JonBenet was killed, there had been 2 windows that were left slightly open to allow for electrical cords for the outside Christmas lights to pass through them.
right.
um, and a broken basement window and one unlocked door in the basement. Smith's theory was that someone entered the Ramseys' home through the broken basement window. Critics questioned this theory because there was an intact cobweb in the basement window. So,
Mm,
like how they get by the
right.
cobweb. The steel grate that covered the window also had undisturbed cobwebs, and the foliage around the grate hadn't been disturbed. There were also cobwebs in the tracks of various windows, and dust and debris were still on some of the window sills. Smith believed that the intruder subdued JonBenet using a stun gun and took her down to the basement. JonBenet was killed and a ransom note was left. Smith's theory was supported by former FBI agent John E. Douglas, who had been hired by the Ramsey family. Believing that the Ramseys were innocent, Smith resigned from the investigation on September 20th, 1998, 5 days after the grand jury was convened against the Ramseys. While no longer an official investigator on the case, he still continued to work on it until his death in 2010. So
Wow.
he was never able to let it go. Um, there was an author, Stephen Singular, in his book Presumed Guilty. He refers to consultations with cybercrime specialists to argue John Bonet's attraction and attention to um, pedophiles, um, uh, affiliated with, I guess, child pageants and in that
Oh,
scene and things like that. Singular further believes the investigation was overly focused on the Ramsey parents, hampering investigations into alternate scenarios and the sexual
I agree with
predators.
that. I agree with that. I think that they focused so much on the parent that they didn't look for
Yeah.
anything else like they should
And
have.
I mean that's what a lot of people have concluded because I mean when the Ramseys truly were tried in the court of public opinion,
Hmm.
and I mean they were guilty before. I
There was
mean,
any evidence.
but and I get the aspects of why it's so easy to blame
Assume.
them. Um, but the one thing that I do recall from seeing them, because I remember the interviews on TV and stuff like that, and I mean it truly looked like a heartbroken woman and a heartbroken man grieving their child.
Ugh.
I mean, I know some people are good at faking it, but if they did it very, very well. Very, very
Wow.
well. Stephen Singular. He speculates this scenario explains why the grand jury did not recommend indicting the Ramsey parents for murder, but for child abuse or endangerment for placing their daughter in a risky situation. So I guess the publicity that she received and
Right.
stuff. It was determined that there had been more than 100 burglaries in the Ramsey's neighborhood in the
Oh.
months before John Bonet's murder.
Oh. Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah, there were 38 registered sex offenders living within a 2 mile radius of the Ramsey's home,
Oh my
and
God.
they lived in a nice neighborhood. Yeah. In 2001, former Boulder County prosecutor Trip DeMuth and Boulder County Sheriff Detective Steve Ainsworth stated that there should be a more aggressive investigation of the intruder theory. Um, One of the individuals with whom Smith identified as a suspect was Gary Howard Oliva, who was arrested for 2 counts of attempted um, sexual exploitation of a child and 1 count of sexual exploitation of a child.
Who is he and why did they? Why was he brought in?
Um, well, hold on. I'm not sure how what his relation is outside of his um, his charges there.
He must have lived close.
That's what I'm thinking. So let's see here. He was a registered sex offender and was publicly identified as a suspect in a October 2002 episode of 48 Hours Investigations.
Okay.
Or excuse me, 48 Hours Investigates. Um, In the killing of JonBenet, The Truth Uncovered, broadcast by A&E on September 5th in 2016, DNA and forensic scientist expert Lawrence Kablinski stated that based on forensic DNA analysis of evidence, an unidentified male committed this crime. And there was even like a false confession. So that kind of, yeah, a John Mark Carr was arrested in Bangkok, Thailand, um, on August 15th, 2006, following a false confession of murdering John Bonet. He was a 41-year-old school teacher, claimed to have drugged, essayed, and accidentally killed John Bonet. According to CNN, authorities also said they did not find any evidence linking Carr to the crime scene. I know it's crazy that people would do that.
What on earth?
So
Definitely right.
and now, and the probably one of the saddest things is because I mean, like I said, it took up all the way up until 2016 before this family was actually, someone went on record to say it was an unidentified male
Right.
that did this crime. Um, but Patsy didn't live to see that. Sadly, Patsy passed away in 2006 of ovarian cancer. So, and like I said, she never got to see. And I mean, there's still
Answers.
no answers of this, and there's still
I
a lot
think
of,
I think this is like the most famous case I've ever heard of that is unsolved.
yeah, and they, a lot of people still do believe that it was the parents or someone within the family. That theory still holds true. Even,
I mean, there is a lot of weird stuff.
there is, but I mean, you can't deny that intruder theory
Oh no,
either.
absolutely can't.
I mean, especially since there was so many, offenders so
Yeah.
close.
And there had been over 100 break-ins.
And I mean, not to mention, I mean, this was a little beauty queen.
Yeah, so like her face had been everywhere in that area.
And a popular one at
Yeah.
that.
So it's hard telling.
It was very much a tragedy. Very much so.
So sad.
Very much so. Um,
Well, okay, I thought that I was going to be like boo-hooing by the end of this. You did it very delicately, and I appreciate it.
I tried to be very, very, composed
Right.
and very matter of factly about it.
So heartbreaking.
It is. It's a very, very sad story. And a very just
A tragedy.
that really makes no sense at all.
It doesn't. That's what I noticed throughout you telling the story. I was like, there's so much of this that just doesn't make any sense. The note.
Yeah.
That not being cooperative.
The Bella pineapple with
with only her mother's fingerprints on
with
it.
her fingerprints.
But yeah, she said she didn't give her any. And then not
know,
only
the,
that,
the paintbrush.
why would the dad not have looked down the basement? If I'm looking for my kid, I'm gonna search every room in that house, whether it's locked from the inside or not.
And knowing the ransom note, knowing exactly, how how much the father made that year, at a Christmas bonus.
Yeah, and then the fact that the note was written inside the home with paper and pen from inside the home.
Exactly.
Her, Nancy, right? Is that her name?
Patsy.
Patsy's
She forgot Patsy.
I know already. Her paintbrush was used in the garrote thing. Yes. There's just so much weirdness.
It's just very, very weird, and it, like I said, it makes
sense.
No sense at all.
We'll probably never know, and that's heartbreaking.
And it happened on Christmas.
So sad.
But that will be kind of the theme of our little Christmas episodes coming up.
Yeah, in December we're going to do nothing but crimes or stories about Christmas lore or crimes that happen during Christmas or hauntings that happen during Christmas and stuff like that. Be looking forward to Krampus.
A little holiday horror for our frenzies out there.
That's right, honey.
Yeah.
Well, that was rough. I'm not gonna lie.
We're
gonna have to like watch a comedy or something after this. I'm like, my emotions are just like.
We'll decorate a tree.
We'll decorate the tree. Yes.
That'll make us happy.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much once again for watching or listening. Don't forget that you can follow us over on TikTok now, and you can follow us on Spotify And of course, always YouTube if you're watching on one of those other ones.
Because we bougie now.
We bougie now, honey.
Yes.
Now, if you're on YouTube, I can't forget the bell.
There we go. The bell.
If you're watching on YouTube, honey, hit subscribe. And then next that there's a bell. You hit that bell. And then you hit all. Honey, you won't miss a single thing.
Not a thing.
Not a thing, honey. We'll see you guys next week. Bye. Bye.